Hello and welcome to Behind the Publisher's Desk with Colin Mustful, a 10-minute podcast exploring the craft, business, and challenges of independent publishing. I'm Colin Mustful, founder of History Through Fiction, HTF Publishing, and author of 5 historical novels. And today we have a guest. I'm really excited to welcome Eva Langston. Hi, Eva. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
So I sought you out because I found your Substack, which is called The Long Road to Publishing. Tell us about that and what compelled you to start that.
Yeah, so I have my Substack. It's actually called Eva's Newsletter for Writers. And then I have my podcast, The Long Road to Publishing, which is only about 6 months old. And I'll talk about the podcast since that's my baby right now. I think it was fall of 2024, and I had had a second novel die on submission, which is like my agent had submitted it to all the editors, and they had all said no. And I was feeling a little bit low and needing to figure out not only how to kind of give myself an ego boost, but also I really wanted a project that was in my control. There's so much in traditional publishing that is not in your control. And so I decided to seek out interviews. Well, I decided to start the podcast and seek out interviews from writers who had been where I was at that time, struggling, maybe spending years in the query trenches or writing manuscripts that weren't getting published or having novels die in submission and had persevered and found success. And I really wanted to show all the different ways that success could look. It could be finally getting the agent and the book deal, or it could be deciding to go with a small indie press or trying self-publishing. And so it's been really fascinating to hear all of these different stories. Every publishing story is so unique, all of the different ways that people can persevere through the many, many roadblocks to get their books out into the world.
Do you find it a little bit cathartic just to know that other people are having the same experience?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I really didn't realize before I started the podcast just how common having novels die on submission is. And that was very validating to me. And yeah, and I think it's also opened up my mind to other possibilities of, I'm still happy with my agent, I'm still pursuing traditional publishing, but I realize now that a lot of people do end up pivoting and trying different things, and it's good to stay open-minded.
And for those who might not know, can you tell us what does it mean to die on submission?
Yeah, so it means, I do have an agent, which that also took me a long time just to get my current agent. But it means that she drew up a list of editors who she thought would be interested in my manuscript and sent it to them. And one by one, they said, oh, it's not quite right for me. And so here's this completed book that has not sold to a publisher. And yeah, I think it's hard for maybe newer writers to hear that that can happen. But I also think it's important to know because, like I said, I didn't know how common it was. And so I was really feeling it personally. And then to know, oh, this happened to, for example, Evelyn Skye, who's a best-selling author now. She's just published her 10th novel. She had multiple novels die on submission. And to know, like, okay, she got through that and now look at her. So, it really is helpful, I think, to hear these stories. And I hope that my podcast gives both a jolt of realism, but also that encouragement that writers need to keep going.
So on my History Through Fiction podcast, I interview authors about their new books. I always do ask about their journey, but I really only scratch the surface. I'm wondering, as you talk to these authors about their long road to publishing, what do you find is the most common experience for them? What do they learn from that process? What's most surprising or unexpected?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that always seem to come up in interviews. And one of them is the importance of finding a writing community. So many authors say, I couldn't have done this without my writing friends or my writing group. And it could be people that they met online, or people they met at conferences, or they formed a writing group from their local writer center. But lots of people mention how you can't do this alone. You need people who understand how hard it is because sometimes family and friends they don't really get it. And so you need those writing community friends. And then I think the other thing that often comes up is the resilience, the being able to weather the rejections and keep going, lick your wounds and then move on. And yeah, resilience and also maybe being open to pivoting, like pivoting to a different genre or a different type of publishing or doing one more revision, even though you've already revised the book 4 times. I think those are some of the common things that come up. And everyone is always like, "Oh, it's been a long road." Yes, your your title of your podcast is apt, "The Long Road to Publishing." It seems like it's long for everyone.
Well, I love that you bring up community and how important that is. This March, History Through Fiction is hosting a conference bringing writers together. That is so challenging
Oh, cool.
nowadays when we're all on Zoom or all doing email. So we're really looking forward to that, and hopefully we create some solid, long-lasting connections there. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what keeps writers going, whether it's you or some of the people you've interviewed, and when do you know when to pivot or when to walk away, or how do you take the criticism, not feel bad about it, but use it in a positive way that helps you reach your goals?
Yeah. Well, I mean, community, I think, is a way to keep going. And I think a lot of people do find really solid community online. I think on Substack, I've found a really great community of writers on there that are very encouraging. So, community is a huge part of it. I think really, taking to heart those little, I call them like little boosts or little ego boosts, even if it's like a positive rejection where it's, an editor or an agent is like, I really see a lot of promise here. I really like this aspect, but, it's not quite right. Send me your next project. I think you could take that as being frustrating, but you can also take that as like, oh, I'm in going in the right direction. Or, having a small piece published in a literary magazine, or even just putting out a Substack newsletter and having people comment on it and like it, just really treasuring all of those little, all those little positives because it does take so long to write and revise a novel and get it published that if you're waiting for the big accolades, you're going to be waiting for a very long time. So you have to treasure the smaller things, I think.
And as you
And
look
I
back,
guess the
oh,
other
go ahead.
thing I was going to say too is just enjoying the writing process. I mean, I think that also comes up in a lot of interviews as people are like, I wouldn't do this if I didn't enjoy the writing itself because it is so hard. So you have to really treasure the creativity and the process too.
Yeah. Well, it's fun to talk to writers because their passion really comes out. Their kind of geekiness over the topic. Because I know when they do sit down and get a chance to write, how much they're really into it and how much they want to share about that. Can you reflect a little bit on 2025 and what some of your successes were?
Yeah, I was thinking about this because it sounds funny to say that the several novels now that I've had die on submission are successes. Somebody might say, well, those sound like failures, but I'm feeling like they're successes because I continue to write full length manuscripts. I mean, we should be congratulating ourselves on doing that, even if they never get published. And I do feel like they're getting better. So I consider that a success. And then I've been really happy with the success of The Long Road to Publishing, which was recently named one of the best podcasts about the publishing business. So that was exciting. And just really enjoying, finding new listeners and meeting authors. As you know, it really is fun to talk to authors and feel like you're building a community. So I would consider this podcast and my Substack successes of 2025. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Congratulations. And for what it's worth, my company, History Through Fiction, is a pivot as a result of a failure. I couldn't get published, so I'm like, well, I'll just start my own company. So there are ways to reach your
Yeah.
goals,
Yeah.
even if you're being rejected here and there. So for anyone
Yeah.
listening,
I think that's very
well,
true.
what can people expect to find on your Substack, on your podcast? Where can they find you, and why should they subscribe?
Yeah, so on my Substack, I do 2 free newsletters a month that are resources for writers. It usually starts with a little craft essay or essay about the writing life, but then I have this long list of resources for querying authors and for kidlit authors, for people looking for calls for submission or contests or workshops and upcoming events. So I really try to make it as helpful as possible, and I'm always scouring the internet for things that I think people might be interested in to put in my newsletters. So that's my Substack. And then, yeah, the Long Road to Publishing podcast, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. And I'm really hoping for the podcast that people come away, first of all, with a fascinating publishing story. I mean, sometimes the things that these authors, the twists and turns that their publishing journey have taken, I am like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that could happen. So first of all, entertainment, but then also they always have great advice for writers and encouragement to know that everybody's coming up on roadblocks. They might be different roadblocks than yours, but everybody, pretty much everybody is having a long road, and that, if you keep going, you will get somewhere. You will get so it might not be the place you originally imagined, as I'm sure you understand, but you will get somewhere if you keep going.
Well, Eva, thank you so much. As a publisher myself, working with so many authors, I cannot tell you just how valuable that is for authors to have a space like that to reflect and realize that everyone is going through the same thing. Congratulations on everything that you're doing, and thanks so much for joining me today. We'll have to talk another time because we really just barely got into it.
I know. Well, as I said, you might have to be a guest on The Long Road to Publishing at some point for somebody who has pivoted yourself. So I'll look forward to that.
That would be great. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you